So are there any questions first, or it's a little bit dark in here? I had trouble with the projector the last time. Let's see what happens to it. See if we did that. How could we do? I could go over there and see what they got, and see if there's like a projector in there. Because the thing is there's so many places, so many times this gets used that it seems like every time I come, see now it's working. I don't understand. 2 hours ago it wasn't. Has anybody ever done that? Have y'all ever had a class that did, where the teacher did something crazy like that? They just suddenly decided to. Oh, there you go. You know, I've always wanted to, there's two little balconies here and here. If we could just get out on that. But I don't think you can.
What's on the fourth floor of Broadway?
Oh, it's all the offices. I went over to Brown earlier just to kind of see. I kept thinking, what's on the fourth floor up here? And there were like 2 or 3 classrooms, but they were all being used. So, but there's no food over there. And so, okay. So are there any questions on anything? I'm gonna kick back some stuff, but what I want to jump to, let's see, first let's jump to the text, if the text will work. And if it doesn't, that's okay, we can work our way around it, but I think I'll go ahead and start MATLAB. Because the next thing, okay, I think I can just go ahead, is, okay, wait a minute. I'll come back to that later. Okay, so we got to, we go into equilibrium, which actually is a natural extension of the previous stuff. Let me see if I can find a good, to talk about a free body diagram. Okay, so let me just talk about it, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring up MATLAB, whoop, yeah, and let it occupy the whole screen so that I can use it as kind of the whiteboard. Let me see, I stole the marker, and it must have been that one. So, the concept of a free body diagram, they always say that, free body diagram, is basically this. Let's say you had, and the simplest case is a bridge. Okay, so somebody has it, there's a support, there's cars driving under it, and it's maybe a skinny bridge or something like that. So you know that, and so maybe here's your road going over it. But the free body is basically make it free. In your mind, you're visualizing something that's not going to occur, and what you're doing is you're cutting all the supports away from things. But when you cut them away, obviously the thing's just going to fall, so you have to replace it with the equivalent load on it. And that's what a free body diagram, you're freeing it of its supports, but then you're identifying all the supporting locations. And technically what your next step is to find out what those values are. So that's all it is. Now, if I go back to the book, what he does is several other, okay, let's see, that. He does this, you know, he says, and I've got the thing maybe, well, it is 100%. So he's got all sorts of different things. Those are in material. The material part is that he took away the surface here, and you recognized if this is a wheel and there's no friction on it, once you took it away, you replaced it with its force. Once you're in that mode, you can start figuring out things. And we'll get to that, what we're figuring out really quickly here in a second. So essentially, that's all it is. Now, here he's got that. Okay. What are the supports? Well, it's that cable. So you just cut the cable and replace it with the tension. Now, you're not going to do that. You're not going to cut the cable, but what you're going to do is figure out the information. So that's all there is to it. I mean, it sometimes is helpful to figure this, you know, to kind of figure out and draw this. So he's got two bungee cords holding I guess probably a 5-pound weight, or no, I guess it's maybe 5 kilograms. But you know, you have to have the geometry right, and then you put your values on there. Now, he obviously put them here and here, but you know, turns out you can draw an extended line. What we'll find out, probably a couple days from now, is that you can draw that force reaction wherever you want. I mean, it sounds stupid. You could put it way back here, but that's kind of stupid. In other words, you could do this, and you could do that. I don't mean to confuse things, but this support and this, if these vectors were going along the same direction, and like you had a surface sitting here and a surface sitting here, the force here would be the same as the tension in that if that was cut and it was set that way. And we'll prove that mathematically later. Uh-oh. And so free body diagram is pretty simple. It's conceptually pretty simple. I don't even know what would the example look like. Oh, okay, you got some sort of thing here. So you got a spring that's going to pull to the right. Now, a lot of times in these, okay, you've got a couple of targets. Okay, this one you got 2 targets. I don't know if he does both, but you got one target here and another target here. You got this and this and this. Well, these two have to equal each other, and you got that. I'm just trying to draw that 90 degrees, and this one. So you've got a free body diagram here, and you got another one here. Technically, you have one here as well. You have this, and you have this, and then you got this. If this is a little pin thing, it's that. And then it sounds bizarre, but you got another one back here. And maybe it's you're trying to pull up the wall, and it's going to try to pull out. So these two go together to make that. All these 3 go together, all these 3 go together, and all these 3 go together. So, but you're never, in this one, I doubt he's going to look at that, and I doubt he's going to look at that one. So if you look at it, let's see what he did. He looked at the ball, whatever that ball is. And then what he did is he looked at the cord being the one between here and here. And it's kind of like, okay, I know the cords, you know, you pull one end, you're going to pull the other. Sometimes people don't consider that a free body diagram. They just say, okay, the force here pulling up is the same as the force pulling down. That's okay. Then you got this one, which was the knot. I say it's a knot right there, a little knot or something, or maybe an eye bolt, pulling, pulling, and pulling. Oh, and that's all he had. So what are coplanar forces? Those are just forces that lay in the same plane there. It's the same thing. It's essentially saying two-dimensional. X. Well, yeah, okay, that's what I said. I thought that was a Z. X and Y, it's just forces that lay in a plane. Now, if you look back at the free body diagram, it kind of goes together. If you're looking at this and you're pushing here on this and you're pushing on that, and there was a weight, which I'm not sure you included that, but anyway, in a tension, it's pretty apparent that if this thing's going to sit still, thereby making the, you know, statics is the name of the course, then the sum of the forces is not it'll still equal mass times acceleration, but there will be a mass, but there won't be an acceleration because it's not moving. And so you're going to have some of the forces in X, some of the forces in Y, and that's it. So that's what he's got here. He's got it listed in a generic form. Okay, this is kind of weird. It kind of bugs me. So this is a vector. These are the components. So even though these look the same, this is just slightly bold-faced. And what I generally do is put an arrow over it. That's a vector. Here's the components of the vector. Each of the ones are 0, so you get, it has to sit still, in other words. And so that's your next step. And then, okay, so you have 4 of them. Is that 4? Yeah. They're all supposed to sum together to make things so it doesn't move. One of them, that's pretty easy. Yes, there's a video. Let's go ahead and let's look at the problems themselves. Okay, so that one's weird, that one's weird. I don't know, that's okay, we could do that one. Let's do that one. Okay, wait a minute. This thing, for some reason, is huge on my screen. Okay, so I got a lot of problems there, but let's just kind of poke around at that. Now the words are so small, I can't tell what. Okay, so how much is the ball? Okay, I don't really know. I'm just going to make stuff up here. 3, 4. Oh, it says, I don't know. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to do the problem. That fits on the board. So I'm just going to say I like 100. So it's going to say it's 100 pounds. What's the tension in, okay, so actually there are 3 individual links here, this one, and that one. So obviously if this is 100 pounds, then let me get that mouse off of there. Then the tension in this cable is going to be 100, because if you did a free body diagram, okay, if you did it, and we're very precise about it, tension, you would say sum of the forces in the Y have to be equal 0. And therefore, I'm going to pick a direction. So you will see him doing this. I'm going to pick a direction that's going to be positive. So therefore, this is tension minus 100 pounds. And therefore, the tension is equal to 100. So it'll be real rigorous on this and for right now. So essentially, that's it. Well, that tells you that's 100. But you would already have known that. And now you've got one that's going this way and one that's going that way. And I'll call this tension in cable, I'll just say C, and this is tension B. I know A is common, but that way I don't have to write extra letters. And so now, just get rid of that. So now, all I'm doing is I'll sum the forces in the X, and I'll pick a direction that I'm okay with being positive. So I'll pick the direction, I'll just pick that one. Now, what I gotta do is gotta break this into components. I gotta take the component here and the component here of this TB and this TC, and they obviously have to be the same, or else the thing's gonna be moving, you know? And so what you get is T, I'm gonna do the C first, TC times the sine or cosine, okay. So the cosine will draw it here, so the sine will do the other one. Sine of what, 30? That'll be the component going that way. The other one is going the other way. Minus TB. Now, instead of giving me an angle, he gave me the 5, 12, 13. This is one of those few that's integer, like the 3, 4, 5. So if you do that squared and that squared, take square root, you get that. So what you have is 5 13ths. Okay, so you take the ratio of this. Okay, so essentially it looks like that. So I'm taking the ratio of that to that, and that equals 0. So that just tells me that TC and TB are related to each other. They have to be such that the X component knocks each other out. So I'm held fixed there. I can't find either particular one. But if I go over here now, and some forces in the y equals 0, and I'll just pick, I generally tend to pick that way, up is and to the right. I mean, because I'm so used to a coordinate system being like this that I just always do that. I try my best also, and later we'll see this when I'm doing some of the moments, I try to do that as positive. And why? Because I like to keep myself in a right-handed coordinate system. However, you can pick it the other way. I just like to maintain something that's math, that'll carry me into the math a little bit more comfortably. So on it, I got minus 100 plus, now here I got this one that's collapsed to there, TC cosine, that looks kind of funny, TC cosine 30, that's running that way, and then I got 12/13 running the same way, 12/13 TB equals 0. Now, okay, so I know a lot of people will do a lot of different weird things, but I think I like to immediately get you used to something to make your life easier later. And I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to continue to do that because it's beneficial to actually think this way. So what I'm going to do is, obviously, you'll move the 100 to the other side. Now, what I'll do is TC cosine of 30, and then I got plus 12/13 of TB equal to 100. Whoops, that's sort of crowded. Now, a lot of people at this point will say, well, you got to multiply this times that and add it to that and all this sort of stuff. Calculators and MATLAB have taken us to a new realm. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. And I will always do this because my goal is to kind of get you going further than you would if you weren't here. So if I put a 0 and 100 here, what am I looking at? This equation will go in the first row. This equation will go in the second row. Notice that? See, I was in circuits one time. Do they still do that? Jump the wire? You know, I haven't figured out because it still crosses that line. It doesn't jump out of the page, but it's okay. So what I'll do, and I'm going to mess with your brain now. I'm going to do something backwards, and I'm doing it on purpose. Now, ordinarily, someone might write B and C here. But the reason I did it backwards is to get you used to thinking, because there could be 4 or 5 of these. So whatever the sequence is there, I'm going to put up here. And I'm going to just put them temporarily as indicators, because when you do matrix multiplication, you take it and you go down the row. Look at this equation. Look for the coefficient of B, minus 5/13. Look at this equation. Look at the coefficient of C, sine of 30. Look at this second equation. Look at the coefficient of B, 12/13. And then look at the second equation and look at the coefficient of C, cosine 30. Now, the reason I did it backwards is because generally people will do it this way. They'll put the TC first because I wrote it first, and so the thing is, if you do that, guess what happens? Nothing. Okay, this time TC came first, and this time TB came first. This time you got sine of 30, and you got cosine of 30, and you got minus 5/13, and you got 12/13. Guess what? Both these come up with the same answer. All you did is by switching these, you just switch columns. If you enter this in MATLAB, and you enter this in MATLAB, and you ask for it, it will give you a reverse, but you have to recognize that your first entry in the solution here is TB, the second entry is TC. And I'll enter them both ways in a second, just to show you that. So as I look at that, give me a second, I'll put on my glasses, and I think the board is close enough I can do that. So, okay, so if I do the first one, I'll just call it a K matrix. Ooh, can you even see that? It's kind of small. Give me a second here.
I have a question,
Yeah.
not to derail you, but
Oh, that's okay.
I'm a little confused on how you got your TV. So I understand, sine of 30, or PC sine of 30 is how you got your X component. Or, yeah. And then TV, I mean, I see the triangle, but I don't really understand,
Which
I
which
don't
one
understand
is
the geometry of it.
okay? Which one is the one you're having trouble with? This one or that one? Or
Uh,
both of them?
Just like using the triangle that they give you
Oh, to
find
get
5/13, and like I understand that it is those numbers, but I don't know how you got there. Does that make sense?
sorta. I mean, okay, let's look at it like this. I mean, you could do this if you wanted to. Let's say the cable was this. So the cable's pulling this way, and let's say it was, well, I'll stick with this. Let's say it was 12 and 13 and like that.
Okay.
Then imagine, I mean, we don't know the tension, but let's imagine it was 130.
Okay.
So that means that it would be this.
Okay.
But we don't know what that out value is, but believe it or not, the ratio, so if we just had this TB, then we don't know the ratio, but we do know,
The X component is 13/5.
right,
Or 5/13.
5/13, right. So, and this, this makes it kind of easier because I don't have to take cosine or sine. So I can just look at this length, it's going to go this way, 5/13, so give me that way, 12/13, so give me up. And so it's just kind of that. And I guess the cosine and sine was easy. That's something that yeah,
Right. That's something I see every day.
yeah,
But I hadn't seen that in a while.
yeah.
That makes sense.
And actually, they do this a lot. If you go look, okay, you can go to Wikipedia and there's a list of, there's the 3, 4, 5, there's the 5, 12, and 13. They have a name for all this. There's tons of these triangles that have integer things. You know what? I'll think of the name of it, and I could show you, but I can't think of the name of it right offhand. But you can find the list of them. Obviously, some people love these, and this book loves them to death. But what's interesting about that is that often, instead of taking a protractor out into the work field, somebody always has a ruler. As a matter of fact, it's easy to find the measuring device on the iPhone. You could basically measure out and measure things and have these ratios. So this is more common than actually that in the field. So that didn't line up right there. So, but anyway, let me try to enter it. I think now I made the screen bigger as far as being able to see the digits on MATLAB. I don't know what I did to the stream, but it probably is okay. It's still there. So, and it's still streaming, so, okay. So I'm gonna do my K matrix, and I have to put on my glasses. I'll do the upper one first. Somebody's selling me something again. Wait a minute. Let me make sure that wasn't the guys that are out at my house working on stuff. Hang on. Shoot. Oh, no, that's in, well, give me a second here. 4, 5, 3. Just give me a second here. 4, 5. Nope, that's not them. Okay. Okay, so K, let me do the one on top first. And minus 5 divided by 13. And then I hit a space or a comma, and then sine degree of 30. And then to get this to turn into a matrix, you have to hit the semicolon. It's at the very top left of the screen, and I got that mouse piece in the way. So there it is right there. But then I got to enter the second row, which is 12/13, and then a space or a comma, and then cosine degree of 30, and then close it off, and I got that. So this is this one. And now I got to get the right-hand side. So all you want to do is get your, and the thing about MATLAB is, let's say you were solving a circuit problem, for example, and it's harder to come up with one of these that are way many dimensions. But in circuits, you can have a bunch of different loops. You could have like 10 of these. Eventually, you'll be able to look at them. If you organized in your head, you might not even have to write this down. You just have to pick each equation and hammer out the row and make sure you're lining them up. Maybe one has current 1, current 2, current 3. You just make sure you're lining them up correctly. And then you just do an inverse. I'll show you how you wrap it up. So this is this one. That's that one. This one is that one. And that one is this one. Interesting thing here, and I'll go ahead and bring this up. What do you think? Let's do something interesting here. What do you think 0.5 squared plus 0.866 squared is? And what do you think 0.3846 squared plus 0.9231 squared is? Any idea? Let's try it. Okay, so what I'll do, somebody say something? What'd you say? Oh, it's actually 1. Did you say 1?
No.
Oh, shoot. Oh, but
I thought it, but I didn't say it.
okay. Well, here's why. Think about what, this is weird. This is weird in a good way. I'm going to redraw this. So you had something, right? You were doing something that you were already doing before. This was 5, this was 12, and this was 13. Can you tell me what the unit vector going in that direction of this one is? This would be, I can't remember, is that towards C or towards? Okay, that one's towards C. This one is towards C, and this one's towards B. And the unit vector going that way. Now, the reason I bring this up is because he doesn't bring it up, but every single structure in this course and in reality has this same effect. And I like to talk about it because some people, once they see it, they can simply abandon all of the intermediate steps and write this matrix without ever doing anything before it. And here's why. If you had to write this, what does this unit vector look like? I contend it is minus 5/12. Okay, now let's remember, here's x and here's y. Minus 5/12 I plus 12/13. I'm sorry, that should be 13. Sorry. Does that does that set well with you? Now, look at this. Look at this column. This is not a fluke. This always occurs, although no one ever talks about it. That is the unit vector pointing in the direction of that. It always is, and it always will be. This is the unit vector pointing in the direction of C. If you want to see that, okay, I think our 30 degrees was here. So if you want to draw a unit vector, you'll get, well, the one going up, okay, so let's see, I already did it up here, but I'm going to write it here. Unit vector C, I'm going to the X, so that's 30 degrees, so that'd be sine of 30 I and up plus cosine of 30 J, if I did that right. If you look at that, that's what exists here. And that cosine exists here. Now, notice what happens when you flip these. All you did is you did this. Here's your unit vector in C associated with the first entry here. Here's your unit vector of B associated with the second entry. And what I'll do in a minute, I got enough time, I'll finish this problem. We'll find another one. We'll skip every single intermediate step and we'll just write it down. And what's interesting is it always occurs this way. The only thing that's oddball is figuring out the right-hand side. And that you have to kind of look at and you have to kind of say, well, what is it? And there you'll have to think, and we'll find an example. Now this time I have this and this, but I have these two. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around and do the right-hand side. It's easy. It's the same for either one. I'm just going to do the top one. It really doesn't matter. You get the same answer. I'll just say RHS, right-hand side, or Russellville High School. Anyway, 0 and 100. And so that's that. Uh-oh. I didn't put, that's supposed to be a 0. What did I do? How did I do that? I put an O in there. Well, you know what? The O is right under the 0. I've never noticed that before. Okay, so to get the solution, there's two ways you can do it. You can do inverse of that matrix times the right-hand side. Or MATLAB has this weird thing, K, with a weird thing that's not the divide by, but the other divide by symbol. Okay, so inside the machine, what it does here is it takes the inverse and multiplies the right-hand side. Here, what it does inside MATLAB, it uses one algorithm to reduce the matrix and gets, of course, the same answers, but what you end up with is the tension in B becomes the first entry, 62.92, and the tension in C is equal to 48.4. And it's just basically that simple. If I were to rotate these two, the only thing would be the answers would flip, and you'd have 48 and then 62. Why? This one would be second, this would be first. You notice it's B and C, here it's C and B. That's all that happens, it just flips them over. It doesn't do anything. So it's up to you. It really doesn't matter as long as you keep track of all this. Now what we'll do now is we'll just go straight from the picture, straight to the matrix. Now, I'm hesitant to do that too much because you're skipping all the set steps, but let's just find one. Gosh, now the pictures are so tiny. What the heck is that one? Oh, wait, it went away. Oh, here we go. Okay. That's weird looking. Some nails in the wall. I like that one, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know. Which one do I like the most? I don't know. That one. There you go. That one's right there. So here's what we'll do. Okay, now I'm hesitant to do this, but I will do it on this one because I don't have much time. I might be able to complete this whole problem by doing, okay. And there's multiple entries here. Okay, what does he say? 26 and 27. Each of the sustainment maximum. I don't want to do that one. I want to do. What does 26 say? A 30-kilogram pipe. Okay, 30 kilograms. Okay, so that's on the board. So I already know this. Okay, 30 times 9.81. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do something really weird. Okay, so here is unit vector E, and here is unit vector B. This seems weird, and I shouldn't do this. It's bad form. Other people who saw the lecture, who are other professors, would be mad at me. But, so what I'll do is I'll start with B. Okay, well, okay, so, hang on. And unit vector E, that's easy. Maybe I'll start with this one first. Okay, so in the other one, hang on. Okay, so remember what we're doing. Sum of the forces in the X will give me that. Sorry. And I'm going to go ahead and pick my direction. Sum of the forces in the Y, give me this. And we'll pick that direction as being positive. So obviously the first X will be here. This E, that's easy. That's a 1, and that's a 0. This is the base vector, points from A to E. So I just labeled it E. The other one, I got to be very meticulous about this. It goes backwards. Minus cosine 60. Okay, to me, I see a dot product. I see the shadow cast on the ground, and I see that going to the left. The other one, to me, is going up. It's the other one. So if I listed B here, I have to list, I better go A to B. I better say A to B and tension A to E. Now the right-hand side, that's a little bit more touchy because, okay, let me fill out this. Okay, so here's the thought process there. I had some of the forces in the X. Were there any external forces besides this one and this one in the sum of the forces in the X? There was this one pulling this way, this one pulling back. This force has to offset this one. That's it. But there is an external force here. On this one, it's going down. And it's down, did it say 30 times 9.81? It's going down, it's negative on this side of the equation. Move it to the other side, and it becomes 30 times 9.81. And this one has 0. So just like that, you form the structure of the matrix. You leaped past what was there. I would suggest you continue, you do this several times to form in your mind how that structure becomes. And then you could just write this crap down. You know, and then if I want to do this one, and I'll solve this one in a second. Want to do this one. This one has unit vector. Now what you want to do is you want your unit vectors to go in the direction that you think the tensions are going to be. So this one's easy. Okay, that little hand's in the way. This one is, okay, where did I didn't do it, okay. All right, so here, this will be unit vector D, and I'm gonna kind of write it here. 4/5 of it goes to the right, so it's going to the right, and it's I, and I don't know what happened to my hand there. And then the other part's going up, okay? You still have to maintain, and this is one of the reasons I like to have a system that stays the same direction, because then I don't get confused. And then it goes up 3/5 and j. Now this one, unit vector, now I better, I'll go ahead and do this. Okay, it goes towards A. It is, or its value is, okay, hang on. So if I got that, is this right in that 60 as well? Okay, so I'm collapsing, I'm projecting this through that angle onto this coordinate means cosine of 60i, and the other one that way. This one is really, 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 really easy. Minus I. Now here's what's so weird about this one. Okay, I have 3 vectors. So what I'm going to do is something really weird. Okay, so I'll say sum of the forces in the x, sum of the forces in the y. You get the feeling that this is the x component right here. This is the y component. Same thing here. But now I've got 3 vectors. UA, or here, let me put UA at the end. I'll say UC, because I can easily look at that one. UD and UA. UC is just -1, nothing. UD is 4/5 and 3/5. And this one is cosine of 60 minus sine of 60. Now, associated with these, you have to have the line that sits over here. Tension down C, tension down D, tension down A. Outside of that, there's no weight or anything else. So this is bizarre in the fact that it might confuse you. Okay, it is 2 rows by 3 columns times this is 3 rows by 1 column. These have to match, equals to 2 rows by 1 column. The outside dimension, that's matrix multiplication. What do you do here? Any idea? What will you get from here? So what you get here, okay, you can solve this one easier than going in, but I'm going to do it in a matrix form. I'm going to come up with TAE, TAB, right? So let's do this one, and I'll show you what you do with the other one. And I'll just enter this and invert it, and what I'll come up with is TAB and TAE in a second. So that's a fairly simple, to MATLAB, it doesn't matter how complicated it is. It's just going to solve it. So here's my K matrix. Okay, let me put on my glasses. Minus cosine 60. Okay, minus cosine degrees 60. And then a space, and then a 1. And then the next row is a sine of 60, sine in degrees of 60. And then a nothing, right? And then my right-hand side now becomes, first there's nothing, and then there's 30 times 9.81. And now if I want my solution, I'll say SOL for solution equals to K, and I'll do that. It doesn't really matter which one you do. So you get 339.82, 339.82, and you get 169.91. Doesn't, okay, let me bring back the picture now. Okay, doesn't this tension equal to that tension? And if it is, that means that has got to be that one. So if we stare at this for a minute, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to figure out the numbers here and write them like this. I'm going to write them like -1. Okay, I know what that's going to be, 0.8. This is going to be 0.6. Is that right? This is going to be 0.5, and this is going to be -0.866. Is that right? Isn't that cosine 60? Isn't that a half? Okay, and look at what I'm doing here. I just inserted this right into there. Now, if you want to further reduce it, what you could do is you could say, okay, let's copy this twice. I'm going to break it away to look like this, and I'm going to say TC, TD, and I'm going to add it, or maybe I'll subtract it, it doesn't really matter, to this, 0.5, because you take that number times that, 169.91, and you do this one times that, minus 0.866 times 169.91 equals to 0 and 0. Now, if I wanted to, you could just move this block to the other side and it would become minus, and then it would be an equal sign, like so. So essentially, I could take this, multiply it, move it to the right-hand side. I could have done that with this one, but I didn't want to go that far quite yet. Now, you can find TC and TD with a simple matrix inversion, as long as you kept your right-hand side to be this. So does that kind of make sense? So this is a bizarre way of teaching the material, and probably I shouldn't do it, but what you find out is, you know, nowhere on the board did you see me express out the sum of the forces in X and Y. However, it is embedded inside of here. That's sum of the forces in the X. This is sum of the forces in the Y. As you get used to this, you start seeing the structure of the matrix, then you start seeing the base vector, or the unit vector goes in the direction of that force. That always ends up in that column. Now, if you can, the thing is if you look at the number of writing times I wrote on this board versus the other way, it's a lot less. And so actually I'm a big proponent of the quickest way you can get to the answer that's consistent, always works, has the least number of computations, means there's probability of a less mistake. Now, so in fact, you already learned base vectors. You already used them in a different way. Nobody ever described them that way. So now that you see them that way, and it turns out, guess what? It works in 3D too. Exactly the same. So what you have, guess what you have? Some of the forces in the X, some of the forces in the Y, some of the forces in the Z. So you'll have a unit vector, say, to A, and it'll have an entry here, here, and here, so it's some rope tied off somewhere. And guess what? You have a UB and a UC. Now, here's what's interesting. Okay, think about this. Okay, this is a side issue, but let's say I had another ring and I tied a rope right here. What's the problem there? I would have this unknown, this unknown, this unknown. Let's say you knew this tension. 3 unknowns, and you have a sum of the forces in the X and sum of the forces in the Y. You don't have a third way to figure that out. It's what's called statically indeterminate. You can't figure it out. The only way you can figure that out is if you could recognize each rope and every structure actually is a spring. A rope might stretch more for a given weight. A chain isn't going to stretch that much. So if this is like a rubber band and this is a chain and this is a chain, this participates almost none in it, but you can basically break it down and figure out, and then you would find out where the ring actually deflected to, and you could actually solve it. So the fact that it's statically indeterminate doesn't mean it's physically indeterminate. It means mechanics of materials is what you use next to solve that. Now, in 3 dimensions, you have 3 equations. You can have a rope, which is tied here, here, and somewhere towards you maybe, and you can have a thing on it. And you can actually determine those 3 tensions if it's in 3 dimensions, because you have some of the forces X, Y, and Z. All you do is run like 0.5, whatever. You run your base vectors, then you say tension A, tension B, tension C, and if you have a weight on it, you move the weight to the right-hand side, and you have a 3 by 3 matrix, and you can solve it. And so, to me, when you move to 3 dimensions, this approach really helps because it just focuses you on one aspect. Find the base vector running in the direction you think the force is going to go. List it, just each one. Put the tension, and then figure out what the force, what's being forced on it. So this structure, moving to 3 dimensions, makes it so you can solve those big problems really easy, really quick, without producing 5 pages of stuff on the, try to figure out how to get your way through it. So he doesn't do it that way. If people aren't coming to class, they're going to probably do it that way. They're going to do it the old way, and they'll get really bogged down in the 3D stuff, whereas you'll have an advantage over them. I mean, they can watch the stream, but they may never watch it. They may just, I don't know what people do. So does this kind of make sense, what I'm doing? And you can work a couple problems, and you can look at them, and you can notice that they always show up that way. And if you learn how to use it, you'll never have to create anything more than a 3 by 3 matrix. If you can do that on your calculator, you can just sit there and enter the base vectors. You have a check, too. You can, before you enter it, you could say, what's this squared and this squared and this squared? It has to be 1 every single time. This squared, and this squared. Add them together, it's got to be 1. So you have a check when you put your matrix together, and you could say that squared equal 1. Yeah, well, at least I got that right. Either I got it uniformly, maybe I flipped these, but at least you got that part right. So you have checks as you can go through this way. The other way, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I've looked at homework before, and it's made me so dizzy. That's the reason I didn't look at it anymore. Because going to look at your own logic, if you go back and look at it, if you're not able to lay it out in a uniform way, it's really hard to go back and find your own mistake. So that's why being somehow organized helps you, because you should never expect to not make a mistake. You should always expect to make a mistake. You should do your work in such a way. Now, I'm not talking about for turning in credit for me. I don't care about that. I'm talking about as a professional, you should basically do your work in such a way that it's organized that when you do make a mistake, you can find it. And that's your key. If you can do that, you can reach a higher plane than the people around you, because as they just, pardon the expression, vomit crap on the page, and then they make a mistake, which everybody else is making mistakes too, they just buried themselves. And you just basically turn around, spend an extra 10 minutes, find your mistake, and move on. So that's why being organized helps you more than anything else. So if you, you can go through, you're going to probably go through another 2 years here, probably. It's probably good to Get yourself organized in a way, mentally and your physical space organized, so that you can be organized and save yourself enormous amounts of trouble. And so to me, this is a better approach for that. If you can figure out how to solve problems in an organized way, that can save you a lot of time. I think I've wasted some extra time because you probably got to go to another class, don't you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go over. You can just get up and leave whenever you want. Hey, some people don't even come, so it doesn't bother me. I'm here no matter what. You know, it's kind of like, what was that? Remember Charlie Brown and Lucy? She's behind the thing charging a nickel for, there. You know, Charlie Brown's, oh, you know, I can't. You know, you've seen that. Lucy's always there. Just think of me being Lucy on Charlie Brown. I'm always here, at least until I retire. And then I'm not here anymore. I'll be somewhere else. Oh, don't ever let me hold the football. That's a bad sign. Oh, I should switch streams. Or you know what I should do is just stream continually from the beginning of the day to the end.
That'd be a confusing class.
Yeah, that would be.
Shit. I ain't done this in years. Wait, what? Y'all doing this? I've never seen this.
I can see you going a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Let me